So everybody, Small here. Welcome to a new Saints video. In this case, it's been a video I kind of wanted to go and do. I want to give more case education, move on the front of the lore to go ahead and better talk about this, but you see by the title, it is going to be front of the lore explained. I don't know if I'm going to put together a new case of the entire series with it. I don't know if I'm going to put together a whole different type of title, like front of the lore explain, front of the lore story, and all the different things, explain something like that to tie together, but I feel like a general synopsis of it as a general front of the lore explained is good enough to run it by. I'm going to talk more about this, but as you know, we're seeing some different case of reviews and big talking videos. I'm going to run you the whole lore, run you to talk about how the characters and everything are like within the lore. I hope you guys will enjoy that. Hope you guys and my fans and their sense people will get into it. I have multiple parts laid out for this. This is going to be the first part. I hope you guys will enjoy. I love you all. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace out, AmonRa, man. Enjoy this.
Oh, candy cane with the white on top. Lambo doors or the woo up top. If you busy plotting on what I got, kick in your drawer and spot you thought. $100,000 on the tabletop. Half price my whip, same price my watch. Got no jumper, but I ball a lot. Bitch on your stony, I do what I want. Didn't know that was your girl when she gave me top. Kicked out the road, said thanks a lot. Goddamn, I love paper like a Michael Scott. I can do things that your man cannot. Bad boy coming down, damn, I'm hot. Everybody say that I gotta restart. Even though my final form ain't none of that. I'm so ahead of you, motherfuckers. How you comprehend what you ain't understanding? Count 100 bands and
How the world is. This world is stone cold, a multi-different case of things. There's a multi-display of things that are interesting in a world like this. For Honor is obviously a fantasy game, a fantasy world, ingrained with multiple instances of different historical take of proud likeness and different mixes, in my opinion, not being cold historically accurate, but having some credence of different things like that, and some different references and different strong points and different points in the history that these characters are inspired from coming together in it. It doesn't reckon full case historical form accuracy, as in agreeing with multiple different things of a fantasy world like magic, enchantments, even gods, and other things that in some cases of the front lore have a little semblance of stellar writing with it. We all know how hardcore the front lore is bad, but I am your host, AmonRa Games, ready to go and give you the most solid sense and understanding of it. And here's how the world is, starting with a technical case of the first thing to talk about in the sense for how the world came to be, in the form for what makes up the world. It is unknown if this is exactly a case of a myth, a legend brought up with some semblance of truth, or the actual precaution for how the world came to be. But before the great cataclysm, before anything crumbed together to correspond the world as what it is, and made it have a multi-bracket of different stories that it has, a great case of conflict coming together with the ancient society over in the case of Asheville, probably thousands to even hundreds of years ago, in the regard of a great knight known as Romeo. In the case of this warden looking like Melania from Elden Ring, came in and needed to go and help his people. You're trying to stave off the wickedness in the world, and so the only way to possibly help out against this wickedness in the same sense of demonic form dragons and other sense of conflicts that are kind of unknown and not the best song to explain, is to drink a great cleanser on the form of a drink of magical form origins, to go ahead and make him reckon the power to go and stop it. And again, with it not being the most solidly explained, and at the same time having multi different cases of crypticness tied together with it, he was able to grace the power to be able to stop these dragons and fight them off. And saving off these dragons gave him the great glory and the counting of him being a warrior to be known out for the rest of time. As he obviously fought off dragons, and dragons breathe fire, and so he was able to rock with creatures beyond even man's comprehension. He, in the same sense, was one of the most great A-form wardens, and was a standing ovation of what the wardens wished to be. His name known out for the years, and a lot of his code and ideals and what he stood for was reckoned / being played to as a standpoint for what you should do as a warden throughout a lot of the test of time. Ramiel is very clear in the case of how he's like and who he is, especially with his look and different accounts, and you see from the game with his skin, he's not normal looking human because of the state of the time where he came from. but is still obviously a warrior that holds descendants such as sensory from the wardens and descendant of different form of human form like characteristics, and rivaling dragons obviously in this time is a bit mixed in account of how things are like, but he's just one of the few in the sense of legends. He battled magic form beings, and other cases of regions and earth form warriors and people of different cultures have different form of magical essence and different sense of things that make them special as well. To go from the knights to go on to the Vikings, Norse gods, or at least their creatures and monsters, have a place within the world and do actually in fact exist. As the Jormungandrs and their cult-like form following to Jormungandr the world serpent and one of the children of Loki does in fact exist. If you go on to Store Stronghold, the big ass form snake-like bone reptilian form body skeleton is in fact supposed to be Jormungandr. Jormungandr in this case was not actually killed by anybody from what we know. Again, it's very cryptic and not the most greatly explained in the same sense of the lore, as again the front lore is big iffy and not no solemn in the same sense of what its full course and purpose is supposed to be, as it is very messy and mixed mash. But the best sense of understanding we have from it in the pulse of the time that came when this happened and the actual take of the story of Jormungandr mixed in the same sense of actual Norse mythology is that Jormungandr existed, have his body coming in the same sense for how things came to be. There's a theory that he's actually the reason for the case of the cataclysm and awakening of this multi-rack of different things that came together in the form of the lore, characters, and build up, and the fact that he made the multi-riots in form of despair in case of great shattering of the people's lives just because of his being. As if you know anything about Norse mythology, you know Jormungandr is so big he's able to wrap around Earth and make himself eat his own tail almost. And so in the love for Jormungandr slash seeing a great form of possible belief to be brought out through him, they decided to go ahead and follow him, and eventually, in the said time where Jormungandr having followers, he would supposedly die somehow, and his skeleton, all his bones, will be crafted together slash compounded to make a big shrine representing the snake of Midgard, and in this case, be a shrine so showcasing of their love and collecting different things. It is unknown exactly how long the Jormungandr's reign of form of love in case of religious love and worship to Jormungandr was, but I would best say, because of say of the time, this definitely was in the wake of the cataclysm coming, or in the same sense of really about before in this, as again, like I just say to reiterate, it's not strong on the same sense of how long the case of the worship was, or even how long Jormungandr had been on Earth at different points of time and different places to be, because again, in comparison to mythology, it's not the best explained within the time with mix of it, but at the same time, it would best say that this is in the great ancient states of the time within the case of the Vikings and mix mash of different properties within time within the Vikings and other things like that all together. And so within the case of his death reigned a great deal of glorious ends for Jormungandr's and their entire beliefs, with their legacy and what they stood for being put off in the sense of the history of the Vikings for over years to come. Moving away from the Vikings, you would go to the samurai, with the samurai's case of goddess, monsters, and different creatures being inspiration to represent their might and the glorious means that they would gain in the same sense of fighting throughout Japan, and later on coming because of the cataclysm breaking up their home and destroying every remnants of what Japan was like, coursing to the Maya. Within the magic that you see throughout with Hirokiri, Shigoki, and Kaioshin, they have remnants of different sense of soul form magic, blood form magic, and spiritual capabilities to conjure different capabilities out of thin air to make different things happen. Within these capabilities, they're able to go ahead and do great summons, do spiritual rituals like Kao Shin to mimic the scene of the air around you to close you out, and a mental to spiritual bomb, Shigoki, through being superhuman and great capability to be more powerful than others around him, has the capability to do superhuman and super strength like form capabilities, being the Hulk juggernaut of the samurai, a big body dude that ascends in the case of his people from different places that have not been exactly defined, but it seemed like he has a remnants of what the core spiritual culture of the samurai is, and now he's able to reckon the capabilities to boulder through people and wreck you in half if he wanted to. He's a behemoth beyond comprehension, and if you mess with Shigokis and who they are, they will be a big ass Oni coming to stomp you out. And what the Oni exactly were, in a sense, in comparison to Japanese mythology, folklore, and religion in different cases, was beasts or ogres that would go ahead and annihilate different villages and kill different people for the means of getting meat, as they were cannibalistic form humanoid creatures that would kill and bring out form of nothing but form of devastation in comparison to others. Sorry, stuck in my throat, pause. And then in the mix of this same sense of destruction, there will be a case of where they would have the large cannibals, these big molding form ramming weapons that would go ahead and crank any person that got in their way into, but at the same time, in different form of the mythology, different form of the culture, there'll be different people to go and stop them. And so the raging might and the terrifying scenes of the demon vibe, and the fact that it uses horror stories to keep kids in check at night when it came down for bedtime, they'll be using inspiration for the reckon of the wrath that the samurai hold it, as you see in the demon mask and how they're like, and the fact that they're similar to sumo. The Shigoki carry the weight of the strength of the samurai on their shoulders, and they care super about what they stand for and never try to do poorly. And removing of the Oni mask or disservice to the Oni code slash what the Shigoki stand for would be dishonor to them, as a samurai hold up honor gracefully in the form of their magic, and their culture holds a big place in the same sense for why they do what they do, and reckon the same sense of capabilities that they have in the form of the Shigoki bondage. When it comes down to Hirokiri and Kaoshin, they're able to mystically mimic and blister out different capabilities of soul form magic, disable the capability of a person's body. Hirokiri literally collects souls and is scarred spiritually, emotionally, and physically from the trauma. Kaoshin and his people, possibly for years to come, or came up in the same sense of the bringing of the samurai and how they were like, and possibly from the orders of the shogun, had schools that taught different form of people how to become one with the state of the spiritual cognitive capabilities, and with this we're able to do great things with them, as Kaoshin is able to do multitude of different things, having a blitzen lightsaber Jedi form movement to do Jedi force like science and stuff within his spiritual capabilities. And also it might just be because of him and other people all representing Kaoshin with multiple form of arms from the spiritual capabilities, and they're able to pull that stuff out. And the great warrior in the form of himself mastered some of these capabilities and used it in the more like elegant sense of a Orochi great samurai way, instead of a dynamic state of like anime character protagonist state of movement, and was able to go ahead and bind together not just within the mix of spiritual and great a mastery of his essence of great teaching from his masters or whatever, but also utilize his skill in the mix of it, making a living weapon and one of the greatest samurai to ever be seen. And in his own words, the only other person to match him in the state of his skill was the Emperor's champion, which you play, as you see here within the footage, in the form of the Orochi in the Samurai campaign in chapter 3. Within these capabilities to be able to disguise himself slash to go ahead and mist you in the same sense of clones that are also coming from Kaoshin with doing multitude of things. He's able to go ahead and distract you, make you slip up, pull different dynamic capabilities within the magic moves, blister different capabilities of mix up and magic, and most importantly with his sword that whatever the user wields is able to wrench on you within the same sense of form of great poison effect or even bloody state of movement, not just within the cutting edge of them, but also just have the capability to inflict great deal of damage within the midst of their magical form of capabilities. With Tozen being one of, besides Kaoshin, greatest from wielders of these capabilities, he was able to stave off the Raider, but unfortunately met his end at the Raider, which we'll get more into in the same sense of my second video that I have planned to put together. In the gaze of evolving these capabilities, like in the form of Hirokiri, she would be scarred, and with that, the mainline form Hirokiri in the form of Sakura will be scarred from these capabilities, but utilized in the greatest way to get vengeance for our people that were slaughtered, and to be able to be a living executioner full and through, going for different parts of the Maya, killing different people that deserved it, and raining terror to all. Like in a sense, for Shigoki with the form of the Oni, that were big Brock demons, which I big and more explain in my Oni type of video, what you guys want to see, which is my Halloween special about horror of what the Oni did. And then bringing nothing but a case of scary feel, and at the same time being living definition of weapons that are big Brock, and had a big ass club that will tear you apart in the mix of it, and can literally crack your body in half and make you build like a Tootsie Roll wrapper. Also came the sense in the spiritual demons that come within Hitokiri's inspiration. They'll take the souls of different people around them. Followers will be claimed by the form of wrath, and most importantly, if you disturbed them or disrespected them, you'll be claimed by their executioner like wrath. And Hitokiri reckons that to a T. She solidifies the definition of the girl your boyfriend told you not to worry about, and she will kill your ass in a second. And this is also why any form of Hitokiri Sakura is scarred with them having a raspy voice and pretty much disconfigured form of body and contempt within her soul, as in the same sense of Hitokiri is so scarred, she does the most brutacious amount of things, and when she speaks, it sounds like a demon is speaking to you on some Evil Dead Rise stuff. And then in regard for the capabilities that stand with Hitokiri, just in general, it's simply just a slaughter fest, a different spiritual component of different capabilities, and so she's able to pretty much one-shot you with a hammering Asusubuken, like Sansa move, aka the funny move that we all know iconically from Winter Tommy, shout out to him. And so she does a Mortal Kombat Sansa move, but also is superhumanly formed strong, as she is very strong to be able to carry the axe, and there's a multi-case of followers that tie together in response to the form of the religion, and this has been most likely again from the years passed down from multiple cases of generations to generations, what is being said. And some of them being modest, some of them being evil, some of them being deceptive. How to do it is a mix, but also in the mix of how these cases of different magic and different capabilities resonate into the time now. Also explains why Shinobi more plainly is able to do teleporting moves in the same case, and also at the same time using some different case of bombs, a different manifested form of weaponry to do it also comes into play. It's kind of mixed, but it is confirmed slash baseline shown that Shinobi has a technique to be able to do double time teleporting and be a speedster and speed blitz you like Wraith from Apex Legends, and dynamically snip and do different things, shurikens, plucking out poison, doing some great A stance and ninja gate and Shodan Kuji type stance and stuff. That also goes to Aramushi, able to blitz dash and not just doing some form of like hazy teleporting move, which also brings a better means for why someone like Shaolin is able to do some Nightcrawler bullshit with teleporting, doing their scenes and things like that. It's simply put just the way of the world. So a form of godlike beings, or the same magic exists in For Honor, know that in full fantasy in the same sense, full stop, that is just the way everything is within this world. So don't say that it's not in the case of how things are, because obviously, like I said, it is a fantasy world and it has depictions of how real form things are, but it is still proudly a fantasy world, because you are never going to be able to excuse someone like Kyle Shin doing what he does. This is plaster and cap at that point. But besides that, in the mix of all the sense of this stuff, you have a collide within other form factions or things like that within the magic, especially over in China that withheld this, and also in the same sense of Egypt, where Magi comes from within the pharaohs of ancient time, with different case of magic being built up to be able to do spectral form hacks, people able to teleport in the form of Falhao and Zanhu, able to withheld fire and be able to blitz, fire bend you, and to do some pyronetic stance and magic stuff, which again has been kind of mixed iffy. That's by definition that, and able to take control of bombs and slip and do dynamic stance and movement with it and make fire dance for them, in the words and the senses of Zanhu slash Sunda slash Falhao, to represent sense of control. But how they do it seems so out of place within the general sense, like streaming fire through a concussive blast that it damn near seems like magic. It's how you perceive it, but that's just something I want to tie in as well with this being said. Now for the great cataclysm and what made up the case of the For Honor characters and how they all come into play. Cataclysm, the spark of everything that came to be. Like I've said, being strong, understanding what I've been saying, and other things in the display that you see in case of camera and other things. This is going to take a bigger correspondence of things that came into play. So bear with me in this. Within everything that I say, this is just in the form for how hyperbole things have came, and it's not as just mixed interpretation as it is. As obviously you can take these in all different forms. I just really want to make this clear so everybody does not get confused in the full tangle of all of this. This is explaining what the shift and changes for the factions came. Is I just explain the magic and what pours into play within the mainline form of the world and all the things that come within the characters that correspond in the form of For Honor now, right? But this is explaining the full origins. So forget all that. All that stuff is explanation or impossibility for how things came. This is full front and hyperbole for how things pause into play. Okay, so we make that clear. Now for the cataclysm was caused from a random form of elemental slash instance of weird archetypal event. Something happened to where it birthed itself into play, and through the case of the cataclysm, birthed how everything formed in the case of the world. Ashveld was here first, and half of the part of the mire was originally a part of Ashveld, but technically wasn't an area full explored or showcased to the knights, as the knights slash the main area of the culture of our Latin warriors was mainly copied together with different people from a bigger rising region slash showing of different people coming together instead of a big expand, you know what I'm saying? It was more centered there. Valkenheim was a split part over in the northwest part of Europe that came over to this landscape that is best to say like in the even grounds of Europe, right? So it came there for to say the cataclysm like a full fucking island, and then from there the Vikings came into play, and as raiders, as barbarians in their own right, came to go ahead and pillage and make new means for their own in the same instance, and then the cycle of bigger form raiding and formation in the same sense of the Vikings pushing to place came into play. This also comes to the fact that the Jormungandrs will most likely come in here, or some will be coursing over later on. That's going to be more bigger explained when we talk about the Jormungandrs form back into power slash coming to the Vikings again after a long wait in the same sense. But when it comes down to how they came back and all things along that, it was simply just put them coming back for a means of regaining strength, and the fact that they felt like another form of cataclysm or a bigger part of the war was going to enact Ragnarok, the end of the days to the Viking, the end of the days for the Norse gods, and full on Armageddon. When it came down to the samurai, obviously, like I explained, the sense in them gaining the skills in their form of magic from their homeland, the form of Japan. Japan would be destroyed by the cataclysm, wrecked, and no script of it would be seen or known, and so they came to the mire and made the mire their new home, and the samurai now found peace in the sense of that. Again, a bigger place of Asveld technically. So it all came together in correspondence to make the land that we know, which will later be accounted as Heathmore, as the open land for all the people, and it would be a full fight, a full country made up at the end of peace. But the cataclysm not just affect the three mainline factions taking a part of the original home of the Vikings, such as Scandinavian boys. It also put into the case of other form of factions or form of people, possibly in different accounts of the history of this, and so things like that. And sorry for from the background there. Anyway, to go in full explain, the other places that were affected were on a bigger scale, like in China, and so things like that happened was the spread of a big disperse, which in this case a crazy row of different things, like in the case of the desert area being birthed out in the form China, spreading out. Case of casualties, big double sense war, and very much the three kingdoms mainly being in the core domain of China and spreading like wildfire and ridiculously. And this would happen for a long time, and in the stay instance of the stick of different casualties and war being brought out, a character known as Jing Jun, aka the actual infamous Guan Yu, the saint and god of war in the form of Chinese mythology, history, and account of religion, will correspond into place with the character having to go and fight off and stay this off, but eventually through ending slash instance of great settling with how things were like, he'd retire and put down his blade, aka the Great Guando, which actually will hold from inspiration in Naginata, the weapon that Nobushi uses in this day instance for how a character would change. And in this would affect multiple people, but China would be built up different for this, and a great empire of course into play from it. And so if I had to say, out of everybody besides Ashveld having to just try to rebuild and repose new means, China will probably have the biggest comeback, the biggest W out of everybody, from being straight from their homes, being taken from different things. The samurai literally have to build from the ground up, and new say instance of unfortunate means within the case for how the land and other things were like for characters along those lines. And in the mix of this as well, other characters have suffered from this. If we go to Arabia, not that much is said. Super, but Afira had to go ahead and restock and reform the new means of their stories and state of history from it, because of the fact that a lot of it was spread out and dispersed it because of the cataclysm, but they had a great strong string of different resources, and obviously being a powerful case collection of people, a great powerful kingdom, they were able to make new better means from it. But in the mix of the cataclysm for Egypt, over where Medjay hails from, it will leave a destructive pave of new means for Egypt to try to go ahead and blossom the new means, having to blossom over the new wage of new means for them, in this case pretty much being like a cataclysmic means for a society to grow, and they would be birthed anew because of this, pretty much solidifying the statement of Apollyon, where from conflict slash war building us up, which is the whole point of kind of the whole game and the pace of how things are like, you know what I'm saying. The entire purpose for why things happen within For Honor is really being built up through dark times or say a tragedy. So pretty much Egypt pulled, don't worry mama, I'm a gangster, I'm a survivor like shit, in the same sense. You have a whole mix of different things happening that made them build themselves up, and again within the line which actually accurate, because I haven't listened to the song in a minute, be like, mama, don't worry, you raised a gangster, I'm a survivor. And niggas over in Egypt just built themselves up better. And so any other sayings of people that had to deal with it on a sideboard, like in the same sense of the ancestry slash bigger collection of people in Asheville with the Romans, Rome had to depart from different sense of its collection of great theory of what resources and other things that they had. With this being said, and sorry, we'll drink some water, but aside on the same, so I was saying aside with that being said, and the stance of what they had on the form of territory and expand, they had to go ahead and try to make a bigger run of different things to make a new collection of territory to build up. And so in this, Asvel got a better collection of warriors, new chain, new stuff, and this is why they're so densely equated within the case of the Romans in comparison to the Knights. And so in the stance of what they had at the time, they had to go ahead and change how they were building up slash running their territory, like a general form of how the Roman Empire would try to force in new means, even in the case of climactic stuff that came within their people, because simply put, as an empire you have to make new means to really expand to the fullest, because if not you stay stuck in the same stance place. So that's why there's new tracking of new warriors, a new form of bond and form of just bigger powerfulness within the Knights on multiple occasions, because they're gross of different connections and different things that have been built up in the same sense, if that makes sense. But besides the case of cataclysm changing everybody, that's also built up again the front world that we know, which came and collide with everybody in full. And then so we come with the factions themselves, starting off with the Knights. In the state of casualty with the Knights brought out new means, like I said before, in the reign of new means and territory and building up and having more strong suit greatness in the sense of reforming and rebuilding and re-strengthening. The Knights brought out new form means, a better set of order, strong suit form means and ideals, and live by a code. The Wardens wanted to go and represent them themselves in the same way Ramiel did in the strongness of his order of wardens, in the sense his order of knights. They built a more stronger code. The second sense assassin's code, or sense any form of knight means and holding up a duty and vowing to do this and swearing an oath. And the strength and oaths would be to fight for peace, even in the state instance of dark times, to strongly do things in the means of what's right for their people, and the better means for a better day. Other saying order would come with the lawbringers, warriors of justice, bringing justice to people that would bring injustice, dominating forces that in any sense of casualty, any sense of conflict, would be the people to grip onto for means of hate for the enemy, and most importantly for faith, that you could bring out new means for yourself and the people around you, because they would rival any antagonistic force. They brought faith and hope, but also were a terror to any saying enemies. So if they are called hope in the words of Holden Cross, you have done no wrong. A standing ovation, what it means to be the strength of the order of knights. They also, from different cases, even though it's been taken now, and not entirely dispersed, not entirely scrapped, but a little shed of a lot of their means and ideals coming from posing as Christian form knights, posing as people that have a great form of faith within their judgment and purpose, and a little bit of what they stand by being accorded by the case of faith itself. It's not like they don't have no strong means, but it is a semblance of some different cases where it seems like the law brings, especially by their chess play, a different case sent by Holden Cross, and a little shed of how knights were at historical time and how they're represented. It seems like a lot of their form of means is either by a Christian or Catholic form background, so it is interesting to get into that if you want to know the faith of the knights, what is being said. In the lineup of them as well, you also have them bringing in mercenaries, criminals / gladiators into the mix of their fighting. With Conqueror, depending on the case of the person, was brought up from being a general minion, a little ruffian, a little soldier, to being a big brocky, stocky, with a minimal chain flail to crack people, and being able to hagar people in a of different senses of chain capabilities when it comes down to him being a fighter. And with his chain being in line with him means that he was a prisoner, and the whole reason why he was in the fight with the knights being a prisoner is simply to grace means of freedom, to make a name for himself, and to have a stronger means of life, because of the fact that obviously he is a person in the gutter, he's in the shitter, and he's trying to make a way out pretty much. And in a tie with, in the case of someone like Gladiator, in actual sense of times could be war prisoners, could just be slaves, could be warriors that fought like from MMA fighters, boxers, wrestlers in WWE. Same thing. In this, that's a little sense, it's what it is, but his strong suit thing that he does in the same sense of being a fighter / a gladiator knight in this case, I guess you can mean, is just doing dirty scrap work, ruffian fighting for them. Like say they brought a Viking in that's a war prisoner, he would kill them, and the crowd would grill out for that, you know what I'm saying? Sorry for going a little bit there. We yell out for the case of the killing of somebody that's an enemy to their people. He'd rejoice in that. He sees the war that they're in as a gladiator arena, which is why every time the gladiator does something, he in his mind pictures the world around him like the arena. He's so infatuated, he's so in love with it, and he would probably never leave it. Is it a fine gladiator using a mix-up of the Natuartus and using a mix of the form of the Spartacus, like saying sense of original form weaponry with a low form knife and a low buckler shield, not having a scutum build like a General Moromillo form gladiator, but a mix-up of the form of moving, and has a boxer state of style with how he does it, with a mix of a southpaw mix with it, but more like strife hand fighter. He could really Ricky Collin you if he wanted to, you know what I'm saying, and he'd go for the toes. Gladiator is a great A-form fighter and stands for nothing but the galore of the crowd, and as long as the crowd is roaring for his might, he will rejoice in that factor, you know. But at the same time, tied with other people, in the case of the order, you have the peacekeepers, assassins in Assassin's Creed-like style that do things for the order and proudly run the fade with anybody, as long as in the counting of being able to help protect their people through peace, through assassination attempts, and through espionage and things like that. You know, the general sense of people that are like black ops, but in this time of medieval currents, you know. Then you have centurions of the Roman people, Roman form of war, police officers, Roman generals, people that fought in the same sense of for the grace of the Roman. You see, most importantly, fought for the Roman leadership, and most importantly, fought with an iron means of general prowess, as a case of someone like Centurion fights in a very bucker, full hands-on Latin boxing card person. I didn't just make up the case of naming him for that for my montage. I didn't just make up the boxer feel. You see how he fights, you see how he moves. He's very stylish on stamping you into the face, some big stampede of multi-pressure on you. He really wants to rug beat your ass, you know what I'm saying? And again, the Centurions being war police officers, being people that stand up at high order in the same instance of respect and integrity, fight with a great iron glass. They would fuck you up if you got out of line like a true Centurion. They fight for the throne, they fight for the empire in the same sense of the Knights Order, because obviously the Knights realistically wouldn't have a king, but it seemed like a all different doctrine of like order and people. It's not very much known if like the Knights and mix of the Centurion mixed tie with their Roman such Latin inheritance serve a king in pure civic or emperor, which technically are the same thing. There's a difference in the sense of higher cred of like territory means of like what they do in comparison to the case of their order, in the sense into what they stand for. As a king has a means of play to build up something in a perception sense of a kingdom and precaution of what makes people around him the best, as he has a servitude to him. As to be a good king, to be a good ruler, you must serve the people, in the words of Teno Horuta. But in the foundation of an empire, in the form of an emperor, you have a reigning form of power that stands beyond the general accords of people. It's not like as an emperor you wouldn't want to make the best means, but you lead an entire expansive state of kingdom, not a general strong suit kingdom that stands as its own. So it's kind of mixed, but it seemed like realistically it's like a king, and the Romans maybe come from an entire different form of government, and they just stand with them because of their brothers and sisters in war, right? But I would probably say they stand in the same sense of like a kingdom sense, but maybe not as strong, expansive, or maybe the Romans just got a bigger expansion. Just wouldn't make sense if you tie together real life history, but it is what it is. But then you have other warriors in the form of wargers that would come up and originally serving Apollyon, that would also portion the great form of defenders and proud people later at a different point. But when it comes down to Griffin and Warmonger, they would be built up later on during Seances, so they don't count for the time being in this regard, but are still characters to stick in for, obviously, you know, the history and the time point. For the Vikings, great barbaric warriors that would raid and ravage anybody that got in their way in full. These warriors come with modern people that are superhuman and have great mysticism brought into them, but are just like hulking meat heads and full on fucking Hulk Hogan body ass people, with a raider being so strong he doesn't even need to wear armor, because in the words of Gogan, what the fuck does being a raider have to do with being shirtless? He's just pretty much Beowulfing on anybody. Valkyrie have great glorious means of a title, and at the same time have representation from actual Valkyrie's warriors of Valhalla that would take the souls of the damned and great fighting warriors of Earth / Midgard and be brought to Valhalla, in the same sense of Valkyries here fight greatly with their people and give great valor and love to the Vikings around them. The warlords, the great chieftain, great jarls, great beastful form of Vikings that fight with great means of defending and offense, and their style is a stance into like a bear hulking out on you if you don't have the strongest defense or sans capability to fight, and they stand as great ape protectors to the Vikings in a place like Shigokis, but more predominantly villagemen, as warlords seem like the type of people that would try to make the best promise of capabilities for the people, but are just like big sacks of like loving, brawlic, beer loving people. They big bone, they the big bodies of the group, you know what I'm saying? They the jocking, stocking regard of people, unlike being like the Shigokis, which I'm going to go more strong into on the sense of how their inspiration of the Oni stave into a form of something else and to stand for what they had as the original that pours into something else, from going from defenders of demonic origins to coming into proud protectors that are now proudly family, in the words of, I think, Aya in the case of the trailer for Shigoki. And so, with that being said, in comparison, in contrast, they both have a tendency to feel being strong protectors that staved off into the same sense of what they wanted to represent, but then raise themselves with the other people up into something more in the grand of great Viking valor, but then proud family bonding, if that makes sense. Then mixed with berserkers or heathens, the hood rats, the dominating stance of behemoths that literally feed off the killer instinct. They are bursts of manic crazy shit. They possibly could be on drugs or just be crazy people, even though mushrooms and their senses like something that could put into their mind to make them be ballistic and blaring in different forms. Doesn't make sense. It wouldn't be surprising if they had some shrooms to make them reckon the same sense of peaceful energy that they have, not needing to wear shoes, not wearing some armor, just dummy form of killer instinct personified to a T. Then in the mix you have Highlanders, Shaman, and Jormungandr. These people, all different sayings descriptive of the origin. The Highlanders fight with the Vikings at an obligation, a sacred sense of deal between their people and them not being separated, even though obviously Highlanders came from a whole different place, with having their females and their people being defended in a sacred ground and coming over here just to fight with the Vikings to make sure their people are straight in this place, in a sense. And Highlander is just a big stalking juggernaut that helps out his people no matter what. Shaman are feeders of blood and flesh. Over here on the case of the Udon from Far Cry Primal, dummy zombie time, they are killers. They screech and yell and they do dynamic sense of killer stuff, and they're pretty much the beast of the Vikings, and they are cannibals that eat in all different forms. And they also have so much strong teeth and are so superhuman they could grapple to a man that's almost 7 feet fucking tall like Shigoki, who is 6'10", and be able to bite through his armor and just chum you on that flesh like a fucking shark, you know what I'm saying, on a great white like shit. The Jormungandr, as already explained, serve in their sense a god in the form of Jormungandr, aka the world serpent, and stand as a form of cultist people with magical hammers able to reckon ball and wreck any form of surface of the ground and cause earthquakes and do dummy inanimate stuff, and even have some place of like similar capabilities to fucking Mjolnir, which is just weird in every sense. The Jormungandr are kind of just weird in the sense of their lore, but simply put, pledge to their god in the form of Jormungandr was granted a sense of power from Jormungandr, and now reckon the power to be beyond comprehension of stations of power when it comes down to their power brockness and all things along that. And they fight for the Vikings, but mainly fight with them to get into the same sense of preparing for Ragnarok, as it's not deliberately said, but they just fight in the war to grace the capability to be remembered in the mix of Ragnarok, to fight off these people to get a better preparing for Ragnarok, and in the burst of all this conflict to pit against all these different people that will cause havoc for their people, as it seems like in the defending means, in regard to put off any form of confliction that would disturb the course of Ragnarok for its time, like in the same instance for enemies messing up the plot take of like Odin. They are trying to do the same thing, but only specific for the Vikings and not pave the way for their own selfish means, but a better strongness for everybody, as Ragnarok really was the culmination of new means and rebirth in this sense. But yeah, for the samurai, simply put, warriors with great means of honor. They have solid sense of warriors with them, the Kensei being the daimyo, Orochi being the ninja stylist form samurai in general. You have Shigoki being a guardian that once was just a general protector, a pillar of might, but then course into being family, from repping the guardian field and being a strong warrior and asset to them, and wielding his kanabo, being a big Brock dude. Nabushi representing the honorable geisha, females have to stand up and rise up for their people and fight with people around them. Cute, silent, and deadly, solidify a great warrior, unchained by anything, and now stands up for something more than themselves, in the same sense of this their people, and fight for the people around them, especially in the same sense of they are married and coming with the feel of being like honorable geisha or warriors in this time, fighting not just for the honor of themselves, but their people, in the sense of samurai, husbands, loved ones, things like that, in the same sense. They're just fighting to make sure things are good for their people and all around set for the day in the same sense, so they don't have to worry about going through unfortunate change and torment in unfortunate times as they now try to stay off any Saints attacked by Vikings and their fortunate Saints ends well their people as well. Within the mix of that, you have shinobi, which are mainline ninjas, people that fought in the account of being like dangerous ninjas of the night, but at the same time we're on the Shiryu stuff, do different cases, the assassinations, the enemies in Japan being killers beyond comprehension for different people. It's constantly like a form of repetition, but there was just this standpoint of what it means to get things done. They had great A skills, mixing a form of magical capabilities to be able to be blitz shinigami people, different attachments, different ornaments, different wrecking, and different capabilities within the case of the samurais legacy, and all around were just people that were on boss timing when it came down to fighting, when it came down to different form warriors, and if you mess with them, they would split you apart, doing some form of scorpion stay instance of ending you right then and there. But next you have the Ronin or Eramusha, a form of a samurai that are forgotten / dishonored and now Ronins and only wield the sword to get money and to get by. At the same pretense within the case of the For Honor lore, but in this case, even though being paid out, being general mercenaries, they do want to reclaim their honor and represent the samurai proudly as warriors of their used to be code, and not just be there sticking out as some random form Joe, fighting with them and repping two swords, a form of technical dishonorment from it, and at the same time being two swords in the form of samurai's weaponry is not out of pocket. Dual wielding is not necessarily a thing that was out of pocket. It's just more two swords of the same size, but makes the same feel in the case of Leonardo, where yeah, two swords is not necessarily out of pocket. It's just more like two swords the same size is where it gets kind of mixed and weird with it, because simply put, you have two swords of the same size and counter feel within the same sense of the general wear stuff, and it kind of just disables your entire chance to do stuff. But that's in high marge of possibility, right? Then at the same time you have Kyle Shin, who come in here after wrestling for a minute and seeing that the conflict is brewing into something bigger and they need to go and fight with their people, and now they strive to go ahead and make something better, and they're just kind of like edgy form people that time in this, you know what I'm saying? So kind of it for them. But then Hitokiri, same thing, vengeful means, want to go ahead and help out the people, go ahead and save from any sense of conflict, and really here for the collection of souls, and any damn soul that comes and messes with her people in the form of the samurai gonna get got, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, we have the case of the Wu Lin, which I want to get into more with the Marching Fire. It's going to explain them pretty much. But the Wu Lin is not mainline China's foreign military, not a fleet, not a full organization built up by them, but more a warrior form of people that came in to go ahead and get vengeance and pursue their own means and make a new means over here, because China is getting overrun in war and they want to find new means here, as China considerably cannot be saved by some of the same opinions of some of these people, and the pure fact that a lot of them do not have a life in China. As when you get into their lore, when you get into all in Pacific, all of them, they all went through a traumatic or unfortunate sense of event that pushed them away from their home in China and put them on a path to new means somewhere else, and now want to go ahead and live out their time in Heathmore / the lands of For Honor, because of the sense of it not being the place to be. They pretty much just pulled a tarnish from Elden Ring and just ran to a new form of lands and just made something new out of that in Pacific, instead of doing something like that where it's just, oh, let me go and make a new sense of strife and a new world. Instead of that, I'm gonna go ahead and make a case of new bringing of stuff for us in the same sense of this world, you know what I'm saying? It's not just simply, oh, this is disregard to home, because they do have multi-case of warriors with them, a different collection of things, and they did come back for their home. It's just they want to make a new reasoning for doing something by having a place, and then in the time to come help their people, as you will see that more in the sense of lore. So that's going to be the shortest out of this, and it gets more shorter because like the three form original factions, they actually coming together as a full state of lot of different things. Because again, simply to rescind my statement, to reiterate, to re-point back to the case of the topic of like what they did was simply not just make a new run of things for themselves, but coming together, new purpose in the state of the home that never was given to them, as all of them felt like they lost something at a different point, and mixed with a truce of the samurai and a better stay instance of means in a place like Asfeld, Meyer, Valkenheim. That's a new stance into place to pull back on all what they lost and get all back together to make something there, you know. So I just want to make that clear in case you guys didn't know the purpose or why they did what they did. Like, why the wool in here, you never got sorry, because some people don't know that, but that's pretty much the reason. It's just to make a better means for them themselves, and not just as the home that they never had, because they did have a home. It's just more make the better home that they never actually could have in this instance, in case that seemed like a mixed counting of it. And then finally, the Outlanders. You're all Pacific characters that are all going to get their own explanation, all their own things, all their own sayings and the things, with that being said. But simply put, they all come from different sayings and regions. We know little about them, but if I had to say in Pacific, Egypt, simply that, magical things. Arabia, same thing, big secrets, big undergoing of things, big stuff that will be unraveled when we get to Afira. And the only thing to come out a snippet of that came with the samurai was Yuroguma, which I already explained in the case of the magic part of this video, in the said regard of what makes up the world and how it came together, and other saints of lands and other plateau things and legends of Yorogomo. In the case of the Kensei, that was spiritually possessed with demons and all this shit, pretty much. Final conclusion is going to be consequences in the last 10 minutes of this video. I appreciate you guys who have stayed this long. Time to get into the final stance into what this video is all about. The conclusion, consequences. Now, from the birth of all this, created a new sense of people. Tragic, bringing and new tales of different things with characters. In this, a war will come into place for characters like the Knights, Vikings, Samurai to get resources they need to push after, different means. And in the mix is mostly a war that will go on for years on end from different accounts, especially from Apollyon in the trailer, showcasing how the story is and why is everything happening. There will be moments of peace. But people like Apollyon and people that wanted to make the war something more for the people, and most importantly, to just keep fighting, to prove a point of pride, to be wolves, to be the most powerful, the most out-of-pocket sense of warriors to ever exist, where war is all that is accompanied through strength. That would be the end result. As I'm going to go more explain, especially in part 2, Apollyon will push to make war be the end-all, be-all for how strength will be captured in the same sense of all the warriors and be the main progression point for things. And so, in the stand for strength, it would be nothing but stockpile of bodies, multi-case of unfortunate crime, and different sense of debris of things that will come in unneeded sense. And what I mean by the case of crime, what is being said is just like thievery, stealing, just things to pour more of the hate and need to fight on all form sides. Vikings coming around doing multi-case of pillaging, samurai having to go and find out and stay with other people and do different sense of things that would be in a case of unneeded form callous about them, and the knights to reach more ridiculous sense of needs to hunt, kill, and cut down other case people in the mix of a fight and things like that. It would just be multi-case of unfortunacy back to back, and that's all it would be for one point, and unfortunately be the end all for a lot of sense of the time to come. But there's a lot more things that are good about the world that some characters would say and see and inform. And so there will be a stand to go and make something better, even in this plague of war and despair. They would all try to find a way to fight fully and achieve what all of us as warriors try to go ahead and fight and achieve for. A thing that no other person could find a way to go ahead and have, even though it was always for certain and always a possibility. The thing that is in the title of the game. The thing that we all stand and want to live for. I say, for honor. God damn it, Mom, stop calling me. Hope you guys enjoyed.